The rhythmic beeping of the hospital monitor was the only sound filling the room. Its steady pulse echoed like a fragile heartbeat, each note a reminder that time was still moving, even when life had stopped feeling alive. I sat beside Grandpa's bed, holding his frail hand, tracing the blue veins that ran beneath his papery skin. He looked peaceful in sleep, though the weight of illness had carved deep lines into his once strong face. I was only 16 then, too young to understand the full cruelty of what was coming. The door creaked open, and my parents stepped in. My mother's eyes darted around the room as though the smell of disinfectant offended her. My father followed, his expression tight and impatient. Behind them came my aunt and uncle, whispering to each other, their glances cold and calculating. "How is he?" my father asked, his voice devoid of warmth. "The doctors say he might recover if he rests and takes his medicine," I said softly, hoping for some sign of care from them. My mother sighed. "We've done enough. The hospital will take care of him now. We have our own lives to handle." Her words hit me like ice water. I looked from her to my father, hoping he would disagree, that someone, anyone, would protest. But he only looked at his watch. "We can't keep paying for this. He's old and things happen. You'll stay with him for now." The tone in his voice wasn't a request. It was dismissal. "But what about me?" I whispered. "Where will we go when he gets better? We don't even have a home without you." No one answered. My aunt muttered something about wasting money on lost causes. My uncle laughed softly, pretending to pity me. And then, just like that, they turned. They walked out of the room, their heels clicking against the sterile floor. "Wait!" I cried, running after them, my voice cracking. "Please don't leave us! He needs you, father!" But the door shut before I could reach it. The sound of it closing was louder than the heart monitor, louder than my heartbeat. It was final. For a moment, I just stood there, numb, the white walls closing in on me. The nurse came in and gave me a look I'll never forget. A look of quiet pity that said she'd seen this kind of thing too many times. "You're a strong one, aren't you?" she murmured as she adjusted Grandpa's blanket. That night, I sat beside his bed, refusing to cry. When Grandpa woke, he noticed the red in my eyes and the silence in the room. "Are gone, aren't they?" he asked softly. His voice was calm, but his eyes glistened. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. He reached out, his trembling fingers brushing mine. "Then we'll manage on our own, my dear. We don't need those who only stay when it's easy." Those words, simple and soft, became my anchor. From that night onward, we became each other's world. I learned how to cook his meals, manage his medicines, and stretch every coin we had. There were nights when hunger gnawed at us, and mornings when the world seemed too heavy, but Grandpa always smiled. He would tell me stories of his youth, how he built his business from nothing, how he loved and lost, how family should mean more than blood. "People reveal their hearts when money fades," he'd say. "Remember that, child." Years later, I would understand just how true that was. But at 16, all I knew was that I had been abandoned by the people who were supposed to love me most. All I had left was Grandpa, and somehow that was enough. Because even in that cold hospital room, even surrounded by silence and betrayal, his hand in mine felt like home. 7 years is a long time to measure silence. It's not counted in days or months. It's counted in how many mornings you wake up without hearing a familiar voice, and how many nights you fall asleep wondering if those who left ever thought of you again. Grandpa and I built our lives from what little we had. The first year after the hospital was the hardest. We moved into a small rented room on the edge of town, its walls cracked and its ceiling leaking when it rained. The mattress was thin, the meals simpler still, but it was ours. We learned to live within our means, selling Grandpa's old tools, then his books, and finally, his stories. He started writing again, filling notebooks with his memories, ideas, and little bits of advice for me. "Someday," he said, "these words will matter more than money ever did." I didn't understand then, but I treasured each page, each crooked line of his handwriting. In the mornings, I worked at a local bakery, kneading dough before dawn. Grandpa would sit near the window, wrapped in his old shawl, waiting for me with a cup of weak tea. Every evening he'd ask, "What did you learn today?" And no matter how tired I was, he'd listen. Really listen, as if my small victories were grand achievements. Sometimes when the pain in his chest worsened, he'd squeeze my hand and whisper, Don't let this world harden you. Promise me that when you rise, you'll rise with kindness. I promised him every time. Years passed quietly like a slow river cutting through stone. We had no visitors, no calls, no letters. The family that abandoned us might as well have never existed. I would sometimes see their faces in my dreams. Mother's painted smile, father's cold eyes. But I learned not to hate them. Grandpa used to say, hatred is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Instead, I poured all my energy into learning, working, and caring for him. Grandpa's health declined gradually. His steps slowed, his breath shortened, but his spirit never faltered. On good days, he would walk with me to the park watching children play and say, "Look at them. They fall, they cry, and then they run again. That's life." One afternoon, as the sky turned amber, he asked me to bring him his old briefcase. Inside were yellow documents, keys, and envelopes I didn't recognize. He looked at me with that familiar spark in his eyes, the same one he had before telling me a secret. "There will come a time," he said softly, "when those who left will come back, not out of love, but out of greed. When that day comes, I want you to stand tall. You will not need to shout or fight. The truth will speak for itself." His words sent a shiver through me. He spent the following weeks writing letters and visiting his lawyer, though he refused to tell me why. He only smiled and said, "A justice doesn't always need anger. Sometimes it only needs patience." That winter was harsh. Grandpa's cough grew worse, his body weaker. I spent nights sitting by his bed, reading to him from his old journals. He would smile faintly, whispering, "You've grown stronger than I ever was." On the night he passed, the world was painfully quiet. The only sound was the soft ticking of the clock. I held his hand as he took his final breath. His lips curved into a peaceful smile. On the bedside table lay an envelope with my name written in his trembling hand. I didn't open it right away. I couldn't. For 7 years, he had been my family, my teacher, my home. Now I was alone again. But this time, not broken. Because Grandpa had left me something far greater than wealth. The strength to stand tall when the time for truth would come. And I had a feeling that time wasn't far away. The morning of Grandpa's funeral was gray and cold, the kind of day when even the sky seems to mourn. A soft drizzle fell over the old churchyard, washing the dust from the gravestone. I stood near the casket, my black dress damp from the rain, clutching the letter Grandpa had left me. I hadn't opened it yet. I couldn't bring myself to. It felt as though doing so would make his death too real. The air smelled of wet soil and lilies. Friends from the neighborhood, people who'd helped us in our hardest days, came to pay their respects. They spoke gently, shared small stories, and offered real comfort. But halfway through the service, the sound of expensive car doors slamming shattered the stillness. I turned. They had come. My parents, my aunt, my uncle, even my cousins whom I hadn't seen since I was 16. Dressed in black designer clothes, they walked toward the grave as if attending a business meeting. Their faces wore carefully arranged masks of sorrow, but their eyes betrayed them. My mother approached me first. "You've grown," she said softly, forcing a sad smile. "Why wish things had been different?" Different? My heart twisted. "You wish things had been different? You left us to die." But I said nothing. Grandpa had taught me silence could be louder than any words. My father nodded curtly. "We were informed by the lawyer that there will be a reading of the will this afternoon. We assumed you'd want us present, as if they had ever truly been present." I simply said, "Of course," and turned away. I wasn't going to make a scene, not today, not at Grandpa's funeral. That would have dishonored the man who had taught me grace even in pain. The service went on. They stood stiffly by the graveside, barely able to conceal their impatience. My aunt whispered to her husband, "He must have left something significant." He had shares in 3 companies after all. Their greed was as transparent as glass. Every word, every glance screamed of entitlement. I could almost see the calculations spinning in their minds. How much each might get. What they would buy, how they'd finally reclaim what they believed was theirs. When the priest finished the final prayer, I stepped forward and laid a single white rose on Grandpa's coffin. "Rest well," I whispered, my voice trembling. "They can't hurt us anymore." After the burial, we drove to the lawyer's office, a small, tidy building lined with old books and framed certificates. The same lawyer who had handled Grandpa's affairs for years greeted us with a polite but knowing expression. Inside the conference room, tension hung heavy in the air. My relatives took their seats like vultures circling a feast. My father cleared his throat. Let's proceed, he said briskly. The lawyer nodded, opening a thick folder. Our father, Mr. Amir Malik, was a very meticulous man. He left clear instructions about how his estate should be distributed. Fuatsari. My aunt leaned forward eagerly. Yes, let's hear it. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and began to read. At first, his voice was calm, formal. Thank you notes to each family member, words of appreciation for their concern. My mother sighed with satisfaction. My uncle even smirked. But then the tone shifted. The lawyer paused, then continued. However, I cannot in good conscience reward neglect and abandonment. The truth must be known before justice is done. My father's smile faltered. My mother stiffened. I felt my heart pound as the lawyer read Grandpa's own words aloud. 7 years ago, when I was weak and ill, my children turned their backs on me. They left me and my grandchild in a hospital with nothing. Not love, not money, not even a word of goodbye. From that day forward, I learned what family truly means. Blood is not always thicker than loyalty. The room fell silent. My aunt's hand trembled against the table. My uncle muttered something under his breath, his face paling. The lawyer looked at me then, his eyes softening. The remainder of the will, he said, will be revealed in full tomorrow morning. And as I sat there surrounded by those who once abandoned us, I realized Grandpa's final lesson wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about justice. Tomorrow everything would change. The next morning dawned bright, cruelly bright, as though the world had decided to shine just to mock those gathered in the lawyer's office. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, glinting off the polished mahogany table. I sat quietly at the far end, clutching Grandpa's old pocket watch, the one he used to check every morning while waiting for me to come home from work. Across from me sat my parents, my aunt, my uncle, and 2 cousins. None of them spoke. Their fake grief from yesterday had evaporated, replaced by a tense, greedy silence. They avoided my eyes, though I caught the occasional whisper. She must think she's getting something, my aunt muttered. My father replied in a low growl, we'll see about that. Father wouldn't just give everything to a child. The lawyer entered then, holding a sealed envelope. A good morning. As per Mr. Amir Malik's instructions, we'll now proceed with the final reading of his will. The room fell silent. He broke the seal, unfolded the letter, and began reading in a solemn tone. To my children, who once brought me pride and later deep sorrow, I have thought long and hard about what family truly means. Wealth can build walls, but love builds homes. When I was sick and helpless, you all walked away. You didn't just abandon me. You abandoned the very values I raised you with. I spent 7 years watching the one person you left behind, my grandchild, grow stronger than any of you ever were. She gave me kindness when you gave me nothing but silence. My mother's lips pressed tightly together. My uncle shifted uncomfortably. My father stared at the table. The lawyer continued, his voice steady. For my estate, my properties, my businesses, my accounts, and all holdings, I leave every single asset to my granddaughter, Zara Malik. She stood by me when everyone else turned away. She has proven that love and loyalty deserve reward more than bloodlines and names ever could. A loud thud broke the silence. My aunt's hand had slammed against the table. This is absurd, she cried. He was manipulated. He wasn't in his right mind. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. There are medical statements attached confirming his mental clarity. He was of sound judgment. To my children, the lawyer continued, I leave each of you $1. It is not meant as an insult, but as a lesson. This single dollar represents the value of your love when I needed it most. The color drained from my father's face. My mother gasped softly, tears of anger filling her eyes. My cousins looked at each other, shocked, speechless. I didn't move. I didn't speak. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from something far deeper. Grandpa's voice echoed in my heart. Justice doesn't need anger. It only needs patience. The lawyer set the papers down and looked around the room. Mr. Malik also recorded a message before his passing. He wished for it to be played today. He pressed a button on a small device, and suddenly the room filled with Grandpa's voice, soft, old, and steady. If you're hearing this, then I've already left this world. I forgive you all for what you did, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I want you to live with the reminder that love once lost cannot be bought back. Take your $1 and remember that real wealth isn't money. It's loyalty, kindness, and truth. Zara, my dear, live with dignity. Never let bitterness darken your heart. This world will test you, but remember, you've already proven yourself stronger than them all. Tears finally spilled down my cheeks. The sound of his voice broke me open and healed me all at once. When the recording ended, no one spoke. My father stood abruptly, his face pale. This is ridiculous, he muttered, storming toward the door. My mother followed, head bowed, shame and fury warring in her eyes. One by one, they all left, leaving behind nothing but the faint rustle of papers and the heavy scent of lost pride. I sat there for a long time after they were gone. Outside, sunlight poured through the window, warm and golden. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I looked down at Grandpa's watch and whispered, "We did it, Grandpa. You finally made them see." In that quiet moment, I realized revenge hadn't come through rage or cruelty. It had come through truth, dignity, and the power of love that never wavered. Grandpa had given me the sweetest revenge of all, peace. Yet,